When did political correctness go mad? Well, it's quite a loaded statement, and let me finish off this brief introduction by making some joke about mad not being politically correct. Political correctness is, as you might expect, a contentious issue. The phrase means different things to different people. Trying to summarise it succinctly is no doubt going to exclude the psychological angle, or the socio-political angle, or is going to be far too shallow for linguists. It's one of those subjects that can involve experts from very different fields, who all see it through different prisms. No, I'm not an expert on anything, but that's okay. I'm a YouTuber. Essentially, political correctness is language, policy or decision-making, and behaviour from governments, groups, or individuals deliberately formulated to avoid causing offence, discriminating against certain or all groups, whether they be broad social demographics or selected groups, or marginalising or stigmatising people. Issues surrounding political correctness often revolve around sexual orientation, gender, race, all the fun stuff, and the way they're represented in the media. But anything might be seen as politically incorrect if it offends or is pejorative to certain groups. I might call poor people peasants. That's not racist or sexist, it might be classist, but I think by and large it would be considered politically incorrect. In terms of policies, it might be seen as politically incorrect to discriminate against people because of their backgrounds. You generally can't stop someone renting an apartment because their family's a bit dodgy. Still, other forms of discrimination do exist and aren't politically incorrect. You can't rent an apartment if you're too poor to afford it. You can't work with children if you've got a history of abusing them, except in various government blind spots, no matter how much you promise you've changed. You can't change into your swimming costume in the girls' changing room if you're a 43-year-old man called Steve who won't put his cigarette out. Political correctness isn't about ending all discrimination, a proponent might argue. It's about ending unfair discrimination. It's not about moulding language or behaviour, it's about curtailing unfair language or behaviour. That's undoubtedly problematic. What's fair? Political correctness is ideological, and it is reflective of society. It reflects hang-ups and fears, and ideology and fears differ from person to person. As a term, politically correct and political correctness emerged in the 1980s, but was used less frequently much earlier. I can't think of many people who would happily use the term politically correct to describe their own thoughts and beliefs, even if they do prescribe to some of the tenets associated with political correctness. That's because political correctness has largely become a byword for an extreme version of, well, itself. When people talk about political correctness, they usually talk about it not protecting people, not stopping someone writing a no dogs, gypsies or Irish sign for their pub, not ensuring people can get a job even if they're gay, but as unnecessary governmental or organisational interference that is often characterised by opponents as demeaning, often meaningless, or insidious. Defining political correctness is a bit like defining the alt-right. It means different things to different people, and its definition has evolved over time. It's often cited as a countenance of left-wing beliefs, and although its etymology may lie in ironic use by left-wing activists, it's not necessarily exclusive to the liberal side of Western political spectrums. As a caricature, some lefties might not think it politically correct to let children read Tom Sawyer, or they might insist on racial and gender quotas for the boardrooms of their super-progressive military-industrial complex. Lol, it's a joke. Those on the right might, again, this is a caricature, might think disparaging the actions of the military and the media so bad that it's treasonous, or at least should be consigned to PBS. Both are different forms of political correctness. They both want people to behave in a way that is correct, and a lot of where political correctness lies in the political spectrum depends on the flavour of the current regime, not to sound too dystopian. Saying political correctness went mad is of course a subjective reaction to it, but I think a great explanation as to why many don't like it, or are even afraid of it, comes from George H.W. Bush back in 1991.
The notion of political correctness has ignited controversy across the land. And although the movement arises from the laudable desire to sweep away the debris of racism and sexism and hatred, it replaces old prejudice with new ones. It declares certain topics off limits, certain expression off limits, even certain gestures off limits. What began as a crusade for civility has soured into a cause of conflict and even censorship.
This, I think, is critical. Some may argue, and may be very accurate in their argument, that those opposing political correctness have used it as a debating tool, have created politically correct strawmen, or have flat out created the illusion of authoritarianism coming from the other side of the political spectrum. Some may argue that it's the anti-political correctness side of things that's really creating the problems surrounding political correctness. Much of the distrust around political correctness is no doubt ideological, but still, I feel a lot of it is genuine. What I mean is, in my opinion, there are lots of everyday people who wouldn't categorise themselves as particularly political, but are distrustful of political correctness, and probably politics in general, and the culture surrounding political correctness, because they view it not as a defence of minorities or the other, but an attack on everyday lexicon and routine behaviour, or even just not conforming with what the powers that be have deemed as, in quotation marks, correct. The idea of tempering thoughts through language, if you want to make that connection, seems Orwellian, and whether political correctness and its proponents believe it or not, it is often in the news for doing exactly what Bush the Elder said, limiting expression. Political correctness is fascism. Political correctness is completely necessary to stop our culture eating itself from within. Political correctness will be irrelevant once we transcend ourselves and become children of the calico sun. My point is, political correctness is just a tool, and is not uniquely left-wing even if it seems to be in its current incarnation. Those for and against it have their own agendas, and really, political correctness going mad, being used to an idiotic extreme where people can't order black coffee but have to ask for coffee without milk, seems steeped in myth, and more of a "it could end up like that" scenario. To risk the greatest crime of these times, the cardinal sin in the era of disinformation, to risk conflating comment with agenda. It is a tool for and against both sides of a culture conflict. It is an effort to influence. It, like all of these things, is really used by people who want you to agree with them and to disagree with others. You've been lied to. Everything they say is propaganda, but don't worry, you can trust me. Buy my book, watch my TV station, vote for me. It's a modern-day battleground. It's used to control behaviour. It's used to push back against control of behaviour. It's used to deconstruct those who use it. It's used to deconstruct those who would use it to deconstruct those who use it. I think the point I'm trying to make is that political correctness isn't inherently good or inherently bad. It certainly is potentially useful and has potential for misuse, like any ideological component. But more than that, I think what makes political correctness fascinating is that it's almost a crystal clear reflection of how modern society has been politicized. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it is fucking exhausting. Anyway, here's a list of words that I cannot say on YouTube. Retard.